Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Women's Empower Network. I am so excited to have a very special guest with us today. Welcome, Moj. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jeannie, for having me here. This is wonderful. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I love learning about everybody and I can't wait to learn about you. So if you wouldn't mind, if you share a little bit about your background, your story, and specifically the part of your journey that kind of led you to what you're doing today and what you're passionate about.
Oh, sure, wonderful. So I am a transformational joy coach, and one of my clients gave me the title of spiritual catalyst, which sort of resonated with me as with my nerd side. I have a technical background as far as education. All my life as a kid, I wanted to be an engineer, and I don't even know how I made that happen. I was generation zero or generation one here, and had to work 5 jobs to pay tuition and live my life as I'm going to school. And so that's some highlight in my life that I look back and kind of makes me proud of, what I have done with considering all of that. So I have my engineering degree from UC Berkeley, and I was in the industry for about 13 or 15 years. And that was around the time that I had my second daughter, and the taste of work was shifting for me. I was not I always loved my job and things that I can create and make happen, and my position, and all the things, all the bells and whistles that was involved with being in high tech and all that. But it got to a point that my desires starting to shift. I adored my daughters, and I wanted to spend more time. I wanted to be the one who could sort of bring them up or be with them. And it took me 7 years to make that call. So my oldest daughter was 7, and my youngest was 2 when I finally decided that, I mean, it took me exactly 7 years of um, contemplation, talking to my husband, talking to my parents, talking to all these people who uh, had they weren't in alignment with me. They weren't like, my husband totally was like, oh no, you don't want to leave your work. And then my parents was like, what would you do for this? What would you do for that? So it wasn't anybody, even my cousins and my friends, nobody was listening to what it is that I truly desire. Even though logically, thinking with my left brain, it did not make sense to do that. But it didn't matter because it was what was drawing me. And I finally took a month. The only lady who sort of gave me a pointer was a woman in HR. That she really liked me, and we were doing a lot of things to promote women in workplace, and she had me as her liaison as far as making things happen. Like, I was in a position that I could push for a lactation room to be in the at work, instead of women going to the bathroom and doing it. And so she and I were kind of under the table working together, and she ended up telling me, why don't you take a 1 month family leave and just figure out what it is that you want to do. And I think that was like the only advice and the best advice I got. And I took that month off. I still had a nanny, so I meditated the whole time. I practiced my yoga, and I was full on immersing into asking questions from within myself. And I do have some exposure from childhood into Sufism and all these meditations and stuff. So I full on went in and dove deep. And by the end of it, I came out and I told my husband, hey, I'm giving you 6, 7 months notice. I'm gonna quit my job come summer. I told my boss, I said, hey, and everybody was like, no, my boss was like, oh no, you like pushing people around, you will never quit. And my husband was like, no, I don't think you will. You are not a housewife type. And I said, I didn't talk about housewife. I talked about stay-home mom. Um, so so kind of looking back at all of that, and then oh, and so many things kind of worked for me like full on. And instead of end of June, I was able to leave in February with a bunch of being paid till like November. And
Wow.
um, so so it's like a whole lot of things worked out. And at the place that I was practicing yoga and exercises, they offered me to teach yoga. And I was like, no, I can't teach yoga. I can teach other classes because I was always also an athlete, but I won't teach yoga because that's over, like that takes more of a spiritual aspect. I don't want to be disrespectful to the practice. But the gal there literally pushed me. She was like, no, you can do it. And then she found somebody else to partner with me. So teaching yoga basically fell into my lap, and people were like, oh, you're just so wonderful. And then I was like, then I found at that time, this is in 2005, there weren't as many yoga studios offering trainings and all of this, and everything was far away. And I got lucky that a JC junior college nearby was offering yoga training that was a year program on one weekend a month, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I committed to that. And I started teaching yoga as I was doing that, where anytime I took my kids to ballet, to gymnastics, to basketball, to soccer. And so when my training was over, they said you have to have, I don't know, 100 hours of teaching. I already had that. So I got like my certification right away. And like everything was kind of working. I was having fun with my kids. I was doing all of this. And my friend of mine invited me to a lunch, and then she called me. She said another friend is going to join. I'm like, cool, the more the better. And this other woman who I didn't know at the time was in charge of classes on campus at Stanford with health improvement program. So a week later, she called me and she offered me a job for the week later, like summer was starting. And she said, we need a spot to fill. And, getting a position there, it's a production by itself. So she offered me that. And she said, it's going to be outdoors under big oak trees. I'm like, oh, sign me up. I had a little bit of a resistance because, I'm from UC Berkeley, Cal, and Stanford have always been rivalries. And my husband is a Stanford graduate. So that also we have that fun going on in the household too. So I had a little bit of a resistance, but it's near my house, perfect outdoor class, all of that. So I started teaching for basically about 15 years on campus at Stanford up to pandemic. It evolved into teaching lectures on on your day, on your morning, on your day, to breathing classes, to new beginnings, new you. So I started doing also lectures, 1 hour lectures, three 1 hour lectures, 5 1 hour lectures. And so it kind of evolved in so I toward like after like a couple years of teaching there, I was teaching 8 to 10 classes, yoga, Pilates, weight training. And those were all, I was not certified in all other ones, but I subbed and they loved it so much. So I was like having whole lot of fun being, into physical movement that I always loved, bossing people around because I would tell people, fold, everybody would fold. I would tell them, raise your arm, everybody would raise their arm. So I was getting my satisfaction there. And then about 8 years ago, or maybe 9 years ago, I started having, I started noticing that a whole lot of people stay after class and they spill their guts there, and they want guidelines. And I started thinking that it took me 7 years to on my own, and I was an avid practitioner of yoga and meditation, so I was tapped in, but still took me 7 years to really do what it is that I truly desire. And I was even amazed with all the miracles that were happening. that was, keeping me in a full joy with everything that I'm doing. So I started noticing that, so again, like my students, my yoga students starting pushing me toward coaching. And so it was about 8 to 10 years ago, maybe, that I started creating my Facebook group. I called it What's Right With You at the time, because that was the thing that everybody was looking at, what's wrong. As an engineer, my job was, if it's not broken, break it so you can make it better. So it was, so that was like my education background, as far as, if it's not broken, break it so you can make it better. And so switching from that to teaching yoga and the trainings with the yoga, that one of my main training was, I had so many nuggets from that training and from the different gurus that has stayed with me in my parenting, in my marriage, in my relationship with my parents, with my loved ones, with my family, and in my coaching and in my life. And one of the things I remember vividly was, I mean, there's so many lessons, there's so many stories I have from all of that. But one of the things I'm going to share now was to see the beauty first. So when you're in a class, let's say I was teaching at SLAC, which is a Stanford Linear Accelerator, and they're all bunch of scientists. A whole lot of them have never moved in their lives, and here they're in a yoga class, um, and they keep coming. Like, I'm putting them through the grinder, and they're still coming. And for me was, I look at them, the poses were also off, but I would just see the beauty, the fact that they were there, the fact that they were putting their bodies into all these movements. And as I would shift, I would see the room shift. I would see the breaths would get bigger, and the hearts would melt, and the downward dogs will all look beautifully done. And and I would go around the class and I would say, let me know if you don't want to be touched, because I touch. And even you tell me you don't want to be touched, I'm gonna forget and touch you, but just tell me don't. So I would just put my hand on people, and people would breathe in that space and everything. So for me was, seeing the beauty first. And so when all of these experiences kind of accumulated, for me was that, okay, the coaching is the next thing. And instead of seeing what's wrong with this and what's wrong with that, my group was called What's Right With You. And so I did some training here, there. I did some certifications. And during the pandemic, so many different things happened. All the classes folded because there were no more teaching. And I don't know if you know about the Princess Cruise that got stuck coming back from Hawaii in California due to pandemic. And our president wouldn't let us get off the boat. And we ended up getting shipped to a base, actually Marine base in San Diego for another few weeks. So our trip, it was me and my mom. And so we had all that happening at the beginning of the pandemic, that I was away from my family for like a 2 week trip ended up being like 3 months, 2.5 months being
Wow.
away. Yeah. So when I came back, it was more of, everybody was kind of going more introverted and going in. And then about perhaps and then I lost my father during all of that. And so I had a lot of things that I needed to kind of work on. And about a year and a half ago, I started saying, okay, I'm gonna get this restarted. And even during pandemic, I still had some one-on-one clients that they wanted to work with me. So most of my work was always on demand basis. Like, I would be always being asked. I even worked with a couple gentlemen, and even though my work was advertised only for women, they called me. They were my students from before, and they wanted to work with me, which I couldn't say no. And yeah, so, and then but this last year, I'm doing it more kind of, I'm in a trainings and working with some groups. And some of my friends we have also have interviewed. And or MS have interviewed. And so for me was that, I'm going to do this now more in an organized fashion. And the game has changed. Before, now a whole lot of people are online doing this. The Facebook algorithm is different. Before, I would put something online and I would get like 30, 40 people wanting to do it. Now the information is out there, but the application is not. And to me, that's where our work is to help people applying the knowledge. So it's not that knowledge is golden, the application of it
Right.
is the catch. So now I'm doing that, and I changed my group over time, and now it's called the Global She Circle, and the She stands for support, harmony, and empowerment. So I'm kind of excited about that, and I've been inviting more people into it, and I'm having master classes running. And right now my focus is on empty nesters. I'm an empty nester myself now, and my work, my main mission in life is to reminding people of the innate joy that they're born with. And so my work is basically I have a workshop coming up in two Saturdays on when would it be? It would be 12, Saturday 12, a workshop from 9 to 12, and it's about rediscovering joy and starting to infuse that in our lives in practical ways. So that's the work I'm doing now. My mission is to remind people of the innate joy that belongs to them, and so it's not about ha 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 or some things be funny, which is perfect, but it's more about having that in-depth joy that you're seated with, and you look around your life and you're like, oh my God, this is so perfect. This is to have that innate joy to guide your life in a way that is truly what it is that you want.
There's just so many gems that you dropped in there in your story. And probably the one that really jumps out at me the most, when you were talking about you were in the class and you were seeing the beauty in it, even in its imperfection. And by not, and I mean, in my words, I would say, and because you were accepting it as it is, not pushing against it, that it actually allowed it to become perfect or more aligned.
Yeah.
Because so
Yes,
much,
and the thing is that also helps in every aspect of life, like in your relationships with your spouse, in relationship with your children. And that's how you get to create wonderful relationships, when you accept people as they are. And the more you allow them to shine their light, the more they come into alignment with who they truly are.
that's amazing. Well, too, and just it's it sounded like your husband and your parents and everybody were like security minded, like, no, this is a secure job, and it was fear based, and we're depending on this, and we're depending on you to do this. So for you to have the courage to stay true to yourself, I mean, kudos to you for doing that, and not giving in to what everybody else was trying to put you in their box, not the one that you wanted to be in. It takes a lot of courage
Thank you.
sometimes to
Thank
go,
you.
it's a good message for uh, those people in the audience that are hearing this is, you had that one person, that HR person, that was encouraging to you to take the time and find out what truly was your purpose and what brought you joy and being in that alignment.
Yes, yes. So yes, she was the one. And, at that time I was working. I had two kids. I had a group under me. I was like very busy at work. I was very busy at home. I have my in-laws in and out, my house. I had my parents, and I was responsible for everybody. And so for me to tap into what it is that I want was getting kind of like, I would just be like, I know this is not what I want, but then to tap into what it is that you truly want, it's always good to have. That's why, my clients call me spiritual catalyst. It's good to have that catalyst that comes in and helps speed up your process so you can get there faster, easier, with hand holding and support you and cheer you on when you kind of not get that from your outside, from your surroundings, to kind of remind you of what your purpose is and what your goal is. So that's what makes this work so fulfilling, because I get now to be the catalyst for other people, and instead of them spending 7 years, that was in my kids. I still see a lot of people who are very dear to me, and it's taking them a lifetime, and they're still not. They just talk about it, but they're not, their potentials are not being released because that catalyst is not being introduced, or they don't have the tools
Right.
to literally do it on their own. So that's why I think a whole lot of us become coaches, because we get to speed up that process for our clients.
I know it's exciting now that it's accessible to everyone, whereas not that long ago it was typically your high-end athletes, the president, CEOs. It wasn't for the average person. And now with COVID and everything that's been shifting, and it's been a movement that's slowly been growing, then we don't have to be solopreneurs, and we don't have to struggle in silence or alone. There's so much support out there,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
beautiful what you're doing. So now your relationship with your parents and your husband, how is that relationship now and what you're doing?
So, I lost my father just pre-pandemic, and my dad was my soulmate. We had a great relationship together. And I think the way that, my dad has a heart of gold, and he was always so loving, and everybody in the family, even the extended family, they all, to this day, they still talk about him. But I also think that, my training and the way that I showed up in life accentuated that relationship, because, as they get older, they do have situations, and they get um uh, kind of get annoyed easily and all of that. And for me to keep the relationship in a loving way, yet being stern enough to call him out on things at times. And my dad was an admiral of Navy, so he wasn't like a pushover. So he wasn't like, but for me to also show up that I'm his kid, and this is what we're gonna do things, and also allow him to be how he wanted to be. Um, and then my relationship with my mom was very young when she had her children, and my mom is a very ambitious woman. To this day, she still do businesses and she still does things, and she's a very active, very beautiful woman. If I'm out with her, everybody would check her out. Like ever since I remember, she always was, really active, really, knock on wood. And so with my mom, I think I also been the turning point of having a great relationship, because my mom was so busy with all these other things that she always wanted to do. So to this date, she even says that I'm the one that strengthened this relationship, because I wasn't gonna have it any other way. I wasn't gonna, yeah, I wasn't gonna say, oh well, this is her and this is me, and she does her and I do me. No, I wasn't. I that was not in the cards for me. For me was, you only get one mom in this lifetime, and I'm gonna show up in a way that to develop that relationships with the relationship between us. So I have to report that, I have a great relationship. I have had great relationship with both my moms, and I'm so thankful for my practices, for the way that I see things in life. I'm so grateful for me to have broken through those barriers, and see what is the real truth. see what that is that really matters in life. And that was actually one of the things that my dad would always say. I'm from Iran, so I actually have that poem written on his stone. Something that he will always say, Zindagi muhabbat ast o muhabbat haqiqat, which basically translate, life is love and love is the only truth. And he lived by that. He lived by that to a point that it would be annoying at times. Um, yeah, but um, but um, um, I also needed to recognize there's a difference between love and being a doormat. So, and being a pushover. So it was more like, I had the great skills being a Navy kid, and my mom was always also very determined. I'm not as business oriented as my mom is, but I think, good teachings from both sides. And I do everything more heart centered. A lot of things I do does not make sense. and and even my husband is a high tech guy, and he's like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, I know, but that's what I want. That's what I want. And he just puts his arm in the air, and he's like, okay, I know there is no, because that's the thing is, but that's what I want. That's what I desire, which kind of is the winning, um, the winning argument that, I can always have. Like, I understand it doesn't make sense. I understand financially, mentally, physically, it doesn't make sense, but that's what I'm being pulled at. That's where I want to do, and where I want to go. So with my kids, I have the best relationships. They're adults now, and they just lit my heart, and we're just have this, really, again, I got to find some wood to knock on. We got a really good connection. And again, it didn't come overnight. It was
Right.
something that, I allowed them to explore, to find who they are. And I did give them guidelines as far as when they were growing up. And I always told them they need to touch home. They need to remember where they're coming from. They need to remember who they truly are. And with all of that, even when they were a little bit younger, I looked to take them to some spiritual center, and I found Unity that really resonated with us. I took them to Unity of Palo Alto, and they loved it. My husband, who was always busy with work, loves it. He's a vid listener to all the services on Sundays. And one of the things I loved about the services there was they're very inclusive, and the way they spoke resonated with me as far as having it more in a spiritual way. My kids are 25 and 30. We just came from a family vacation together. One of my oldest daughter's friends had a wedding across the country, and she invited all of us. And that was another testament for me that, I did even well with the girls' friends. So they were always in my house, and they always call me mama. And for the whole family to get invited to her wedding across the country, that was another kind of testament that, I did open up the good lines of relationships and friendship. And with my husband, he's the closest to me, so that one, we go back and forth, because sometimes I forget who I'm truly am, then I get into kind of nitpicky. But then for me is to continuously remember that I want to have word of love on my mouth. I want to, allow him to be who he wants to be, and I can't, put him in a cage, because that's what I want. He's also an individual. So for me, he's my best teacher. And in all honesty, our relationships have gotten better and better and better over years, and we are still exploring. We still, because he is a very stubborn being. He's the first kid, in all sons, and his word always goes. And here now with a woman, that I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that. So so he's also kind of being challenged, but we're just kind of going back and forth, and keep adjusting. And we've been married, I don't know how long, 33 years, over 33 years and a half. So
That's
I
beautiful.
I trust that answers your question.
Oh, it did. It absolutely did. And it's giving the space. What, I keep hearing is you kept, even though you weren't perfect at it, but you kept reminding yourself to give them the space to be who they are. And in return, because I think it's like, it's a really high value for you to be who you were called to be, and it's a calling that you couldn't ignore.
No, no. And I respect that in other people too. Like I respect that in my children. And that was one of the things that my children's friends always said to them and to me, that how come you guys have such a great relationship? Because they would always be in combat with their moms, especially the girls, and the boys with their dads or the moms, and they all would come to me and says why. And I always allowed them to be who they are, and I always help them with extending and being at their full potential, the where their heart is calling them. And my kids are doing things. My older one is in Europe right now, and my husband is like, how could you encourage her to go? I'm like, I want her to be next to me. I mean, she was in San Francisco, which is like 40 minutes away from us. And I would go there and I would spend the weekend there. I was like having a great time when she was working there. But when this opportunity came, I'm like, you got to take it. You got to go. And she was more of a mama's girl, but I was like, this is so good for her maturity, for her expansion of life, for her to be able to travel, and 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 so it's like, and then we made it work. We have every quarter, every other quarter she comes, every other quarter we go. We do family things together, and we end up having at least 4 times a year a good quality family time, which is sort of unheard of when the kids get older, and now they're coming with their boyfriends, which I'm like, that's great, because now the boyfriends are also understanding that this is how this family works, and they're also very happy, and we're great friends, and I teach them card games, and we're playing cards all the time. So it's like you just expand those relationships a step farther. And I'm not all of these to to brag, but it's just it is what you choose.
So, what would be some words of wisdom you would share to somebody on a similar journey?
Well, I think it's okay to ask for help, because again, if you can do something faster, easier, and quicker, and know that somebody is there to support you, ask for help. I mean, in the past, we were raised by a community. In the past, you had the grandparents there, you had the uncles and aunts there, you had all these people who you could go to. There was this uncle who was great in business. There was this aunt that was a tailor. There was this grandma who would know how to cook. And they all had their wisdoms to share with you. And I think one of the privileges I had, I chose to also work with a lot of elderlies. And I learned so much from these people who would tell me things. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna write that down. So for us to tap into the wisdom that it's there, and if we don't have access to these, is you know ask for help. It's okay. And I was one of the kind of people who would not ask for help, because I could do everything. I could do everything, anything and everything by myself. So that was something that I learned, and the more I learned that, the more I also noticed that, hey, I like easy does it.
Right.
So I find a lot of shortcuts, because they say, my mom always said smart people do that because they don't want to overwork themselves. So I do a lot of things way quicker and faster than other people. It's just because I'm like, easy does it. Why does it have to be hard? Why does it have to be difficult? It's just, we got to be, one of the Course in Miracle teachings is to be willing to be willing to be willing. To
Right.
be willing to open that tiny door for the energy, for the light to shine in, and then you're good to go.
It seems to be human nature to kind of try to complicate things. I know I'm guilty of that, and I'm learning to be more of a witness of how I'm doing that so I can become aware of when and how I'm doing it. Not to
Yeah.
mention I have great mentors who call me out on it.
That's what it is, you know, when you have the mentors, when you have the people who can, or you have like-minded people around you. So when you are in groups that people are like-minded and they all are lifting you up, that's best.
That's so beautiful. So, we were talking before we came on the air too, you're sitting in your car and we were talking about, kind of one of the gifts that came out of COVID is mobility,
Yes.
and being able to do things, in a portable way or away from home. You don't like, we talked before, you didn't have to go home and be behind a desk to do this interview. You had
Yeah.
things you needed to do and more things to do. And so you're in your car doing this interview with us. So
Yes. Again, that was my main thing. I was like, oh, I planned everything and I'm gonna go home, do the interview. And then things took longer. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home. I was like, why? I mean, the reason I'm doing this is my ultimate goal is to be traveling and do this. And I do, when I do travel, I still do this kind of work. And so it's like I can still take the call in my car and go to my next thing after. I don't need to be home. So I purposely made a point not to go home and do this in my car to kind of keep true to myself and to the reasons that I'm doing this work instead of being in a cubicle or in an office at work.
it is, it's, there's this big paradigm shift going on, even with myself. It helps me, like interviewing people like you, to remind me that, oh yeah, I don't have to do it in the box. I don't have to do it in a completely structured way. I can still
Yeah.
get what I need done and have flexibility and mobility at the same time. So this has been
Yes.
beautiful. So what do you have coming up? What do you have going on now that women who
Yeah.
really resonate with you can tap into
Yeah.
you?
Sure. I would love that. I would love for people to look into things that I'm doing. Again, my group is called the Global She Circle. If anybody would like to do their own search, I will also mention it in the comments. And then I've done a few master classes now, but the next thing I'm doing is not tomorrow, but the Saturday after. I'm having a 3-hour workshop on Saturday from 9 to 12 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time on discovering joy, and also started in incorporating that in practical ways in our lives. Even though when I run masterclass, I still do it a little bit workshoppy because I want people to really benefit from it and really experience what things are. But this one, we have more time to go in depth in and actually play and experience, what are the things that bring us joy, and that it's tailored to us, and go for it and do it within the time that we are allowed during the workshop. So I would love for people to come and take benefits, because I'm like, I would always join my own workshops because they're just so good. So yeah, that's why I want more and more people to know about it and get exposed to it.
That's beautiful. Well, we'll be sure to put those links above this interview and also in the comments so that you can get in touch with Moj and really connect with her. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Thank you for this opportunity.